Good morning. How are you? It's great to be addressing you again this morning. I want to welcome you to the second general session of the Florida League of Cities 85th Annual Conference. What an exciting program we've had so far. Yesterday's comments from Mr. Florida, a snapshot of our economy, and yes, many sessions and workshops, and I hope you have enjoyed them all. And there's so much more we have in store for you today, and I'm really looking forward to working along with you too for, I guess it's a couple more hours. And I am really energized and excited. I would like, and it's an honor and a privilege to call up one of my colleagues, our colleagues, past president, Mayor Pro Tem of the City of Wellington, to lead us in the evocation, Carmine Fiore.
Thank you, Madam President. Before we begin our prayer, I'd like to share with you a heartwarming story that occurred this summer for me and my wife and for Margaret Bates, visiting with our president of the National League of Cities, James Mitchell. We were in Charlotte, North Carolina, and in Charlotte, I experienced an opportunity to visit a restaurant whose purpose is to feed the hungry and to heal the brokenhearted. And I thought it appropriate this morning to include that in our prayer, because this restaurant, owned and operated by Mr. Jim Noble, indicates the fact that they are interested in helping those that need help. They're putting the people to work who are unemployable, who are young adults who are coming out of reform situations, who are and very easily could fall away from life's better qualities. They allow them to come to work there. They learn a trade, learn a business. But the most important part of the whole object is that this restaurant, all of its profits, all of the earnings that it makes, go to feed the hungry through many, many missionaries throughout the Charlotte area and throughout North Carolina, and now they're going out throughout the country. So in our prayers this morning, I would like to think about that's what our motives are, and that's what we're here for. And that's what we should be doing in our life's work. Please bow our heads. Almighty God and Father, thank you for all that you have done and continue to do for us. We are forever thankful for the many blessings that you continue to bestow upon us, our families, and the cities that we serve. Lord, thank you for the dedicated public officials and their families that are represented here today. Without the continuous and tireless action of these individuals and your many blessings, Florida cities would not be what they are today. We celebrate and thank these public servants. Father, bless all who are gathered here and the ones we love and serve. Bless our Florida League of Cities and continue to direct our path. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Our first order of business is to recognize years of service recipients for the 2011 year. Florida's local officials are truly go above and beyond their call on a daily basis. We work. We know our duties. Let us now recognize the years of service honorees for their collective service of more than 550 years to Florida cities. Please pay close attention as the categories of service are mentioned. With the years of service honorees who have served in office for over 20 or more years, please stand. I must add, while they are not all these members are here, you can see there's many of us that have worked and have added to that, but 20 years of service throughout the state as the president of the Florida League of Cities, I had an opportunity to sign all these certificates and was really humbled by the amount of hours and dedication and years of public service of these individuals. Would the years of service and honorees who have served in office for more than 25 years please stand now and be recognized? Would the years of service of honorees who have served for the office for more than 30 or more years please stand? And I believe, and I'm not sure if they're here, but there is at least one. Would the years of service honorees who have served the office for more than 40 years of service please stand and be recognized? Now it's time to recognize, and it's always great to celebrate, and a dear friend of mine, I don't know if my colleagues from Hallandale Beach are here. I'm honored and privileged to serve as their mayor, but it's always great when a frog sings and croaks in their own pond. So we have to recognize these people that have gone over and above and received awards this year. Their achievement awards. The Florida Municipal Achievement Awards program is designated to recognize innovations and excellence in municipal government. This program provides municipalities with an opportunity to receive recognition for superior and innovative efforts in 3 award categories: city spirit, citizenship, and environmental stewardship. While all cities in our state strive for success daily, the city's winners in these categories have stood out among their peers by providing exemplary service and creative programs for their citizens. The winners are the cities of Brooksville for the City Spirit Award, the city of Cooper City for the Environmental Stewardship Award, Broward's in the house, and the city of Delray Beach for their Florida Citizenship Award. Please join me in applauding these cities. As I call your city's name, please come to the stage. The cities of Brooksville, the Florida City Spirit Award has awarded to Brooksville for its Operation Backpack Project. Operation Backpack was launched by the city of Brooksville and Friends of the Children to provide free backpacks filled with school supplies to the underprivileged children of its community. Please give Brooksville a round of applause for their effort. There you go, that's your workout. Wow, that is a workout. Congratulations. The city of Delray Beach, the Florida Citizenship Award was awarded to Delray Beach for its Connecting with Our Schools, Civics, Education, and Delray Beach program. Through this program, Delray Beach offers civic education programs for all ages, from students to retirees. Please give a warm Florida League of Cities to the city. There you go. Here, step right over here. Congratulations. Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you. Good job. Good job. And the city of Cooper City. The Environmental Stewardship Award was awarded to Cooper City for its You Win, We All Win water conservation program. Cooper City set a goal to reduce overall water use by 5% in 3 years by implementing an innovative water conservation program. Congratulations, Cooper City and Lisa Millett.
I just want to let everyone know that I'm holding a photograph of my utilities department right here because it's with their effort and their innovation that we made this program and that we lowered our consumptive use. And I want them here in spirit accepting this award with me. I'm good.
Thank you. Congratulations. Let's give all the award recipients a round of applause this morning. I'm going to, it's with great privilege and honor that I invite up to the dais. I think you're on. Invite our second Vice President, Mayor Manny Moronio, to the dais. How's that for timing?
It actually was. Sorry. That's the second time that happens today, that I'm on the phone. My name is Manny Moronio, your second Vice President. Today I'm very pleased and proud to recognize two legislators as defenders of home rule. And one of them happens to be a good friend, so that makes it better. Both of these legislators are former city officials who have not forgotten where they come from. Only sometimes, but he has Cuban coffee in his office, so he still remembers. The Defender of Home Rule recipients are legislators who consistently advocate on behalf of the Home Rule and supports the Florida League of Cities legislative agenda during the 2011 legislative session. We have the pleasure of having one of those legislators in attendance, Representative Eddie Gonzalez from the city of Hialeah. Representative Eddie Gonzalez is a former member of the Hialeah City Council and has served in the Florida League of Cities Board of Directors since 1999. Representative Gonzalez was instrumental in the fight against SB 88, which would have limited severance pay for terminated public employees for only 6 weeks. Representative Gonzalez fought the good fight to extend the time period for up to 20 weeks. He also offered other amendments that reserved local government control over issues that are and should be within the purview of local government and on a variety of other bills in past session. Representative Gonzalez has an open door. He really does. You can go see him anytime. To all city officials, and a staunch and consistent defender of municipalities. He consistently works with the League to ensure our interests are being considered on any legislative and is working very hard to make sure that the cities get what they deserve. And for that, Mr. Gonzalez. And yes, it is here. Yes, Madam President. And this is Eddie Gonzalez, Jr.
So cute. You're handsome,
Shift. I'll say a few words. Stand here. Oh, thank you.
Good morning. Thank you very, very much. And let me introduce my son, Evan, which got up this morning and said, Dad, I'm up early like you are because I want to go get the award with you. So that to me means more than anything. And I will say this, he was up with me, with Manny and some of these guys till close to 2 in the morning, and J.C. Bermudez is sweet. So he's a trooper. It's an honor for me to serve where I am today. Turn it, Bubby. I was able to serve on the Hialeah City Council for 8 years, and those were the best years of my life. I guess God has a way to, or has a path for you, and I ended up in the legislature, and I'm doing it. I don't love it. What I love is what you do. I love local government, and I was able to serve in this league for 8 years on some committees, on the executive board, and it was the best years of my life, and I know that someday I will be back in local government. In the meantime, I will continue to fight and defend for our issues. Like Senator Latvala and Representative Harrison said yesterday, it's important for all of you to keep pushing your legislators. And there's always at least a dozen bills every year who affect you, affect our cities. And it's important for them to know that we need to have control at the local level. And I will always be with that. I will always feel that we have to fight for the local governments. At the end of the day, all politics is local. And at the end of the day, the most important work in the world, I think, when it comes to politics is what you do, and it's what I love to do. So I will always defend your rights and your issues, and I've done it every year as much as we can. There's times we amend bills. There's times we're able to defeat bills in committee. Other times we're not so successful, but we fight the good fight. And I know that you need to keep the pressure on your elected officials at the state. And if you need to tell them, you know, I may run against you, it doesn't hurt. Maybe it'll scare them a little bit. Because up there, I can tell you, I see it day in and day out. People forget where they came from. And I am honored to say I served on the Miami-Dade League. I know there's a bunch of members, and the president's here from the Miami-Dade League of Cities. And they know that I've stayed true, and I go to every single meeting. And then in the 5 years that I've been in the legislature, I've been here at every single conference, and I will continue to do it. God bless you. Thank you very much.
And the truth is, those of you that don't know Eddie, he did go to the legislature, not because he wanted to serve in the House. He just wanted to make sure that we were protected. And that's really why he went to the House, because his true passion is in local government. So thank you, Eddie, once again. I gotta find my spot, so give me a minute. The next recipient, well, it should have been easy. The next recipient is Representative Seth McKeel. Representative McKeel could not be with us today, but let's give him a round of applause. I'm going to read this plaque afterward. I didn't read Eddie's. Representative Seth McKeel is a former member of the Lakeland City Commission and has not forgotten the local government roots. Representative McKeel serves as chairman of the House Senate Affairs Committee. Many of the bills moved through that committee had direct impact on cities. Representative McKeel consistently ensured that local government issues were considered during the policy discussion and ensured that we had a seat at the table. Prior to the start of the session 2011, Representative McKeel helped us secure bill sponsors for some of the Florida League of Cities priority issues. Representative McKeel is a true friend to local government. Thank you again, Representative Gonzalez and Representative McKeel, for all the hard work and dedication to home rule. And I want to read one of the plaques because I didn't read Eddie's. So the plaques read, for outstanding leadership in the Florida House of Representatives on behalf of Florida municipalities, citizens, and the exemplary dedication and your support to the principles of home rule. Thank you, both Representatives McKeel and Gonzalez. Now, for the fourth year in a row, we've invited our youth councils participating in our annual conference. Today, I would like to welcome youth councils from cities of Dade City, Fort Myers, North Miami Beach, St. Petersburg, and Tampa. Also attended are students from the Palm Beach County Youth Delegation. These students are Florida's future public servants. Please stand to be recognized. Thank you for being with us here today.
Sorry. Good morning. It's hard to keep up with what time it is, but we are honored today to have James Mitchell, the president of the National League of Cities, with us today. I met James in March at National League of Cities, and it took me about 5 minutes to figure out this man was probably the best choice for presidency of National League. I just think the world of him, and it didn't take me long to figure that out. As a council member, James Mitchell represents Charlotte, North Carolina, City Council District 2. He is the former chair of NLC's National Black Caucus of Local Elected Officials Foundation and is the past president of the North Carolina Black Elected Municipal Officials. Let's welcome James Mitchell.
Wow. No. No, no, no. Thank you so much, Florida. Good morning. It is indeed an honor to stand before you because just feel like I'm coming back home. And 2008, it was here in Orlando, Florida, the same hotel that a young lady from Orlando, Daisy Lynham, told me to run for NLC second vice president. And I need to say this publicly. It's one thing for someone to encourage you to run, but it's another one to have her support and her passion. So Daisy, where are you? Will you please stand? Miss Daisy Lynham. Daisy? But then along the way, I had to choose a mentor, someone who really was going to spend time to nurture me and develop me. And he even showed his commitment today because he was off in Madrid, Spain. And he flew back to this country, drove up early this morning, 5 a.m. this morning, just to make sure he could be here and support me. One of your very own, with Clarence Anthony. Please wave us. My mentor. Thank you, Clarence. Now, most of my NLC family knows that in order for me to really give a great speech, I need to make sure there's a lot of energy in the room. And so they always say, James, what are you going to do crazy and kind of out of the box? So, Florida, you got to help me today. So turn to your neighbor to the right. That's right. Turn to the neighbor to the right. Give that person a hug. There you go. Come on, it's not enough hugging. Come on. All right. Now, do you feel the love? Now, I need you to turn to your neighbor to the left, shake their hand, and repeat after me. I look better than you. All right, now I can give my speech now. All right. It has been truly an honor to serve as NLC president, and Florida, really, thank you so much for allowing me to be here. But I don't need to tell you that the elected officials of your great state are in so many different positions with the NLC, and at this time, I need to recognize all those board members of the NLC from the great state of Florida. Will you please stand at this time and be recognized? I know it's 3. I don't want to call your names out. Margaret, Carmen, and where's Michael, your executive director? Mike, thank you. We have some members here of the NLC Advisory Council. If you're a member of the NLC Advisory Council, at this time, will you please stand? Thank you, Frank, Daisy. I know this. Then I had the opportunity to select about 81 chairs and vice chairs to lead and be part of the leadership team. And I know here in Florida, I have on this paper, about 12 of them. So will you please stand? If you're a vice chair, chair of an NLC policy committee, please stand. Ike Robinson, I don't want to call your name out. Please stand. And then, Florida, you're really going to laugh. You know, during my presidency, I was trying to find a way to, as we go to different cities, that we could give back to the community, what I call leaving our footprint. And so I still have this passion. I still think I'm a good basketball player at my old age of 40-ish. And so I created an NLC Dream Team. And our first game, we played against a middle school in Washington, D.C., and we beat them 28-26. Now, the bad thing about it, they were 12 and 13-year-olds. But we recognized 6th and 7th graders, and we gave them a certificate. It was about citizenship. But you had one of your very own who served as my power forward on the NLC Dream Team. So, Don, will you please stand? My power forward. He was 1 from 7 from the field, but he had 8 rebounds, so he contributed. Let me be very brief, and Mayor Bates, thank you for that wonderful introduction and for those kind words. But I want to come back, Florida, so in order to have me back, I need to be very brief. So I need to accept a motion on the floor that the president will only talk 10 minutes. Is there a motion? Is there a second? 10 minutes it is. The National League of Cities, we're an advocacy group of 19,000 cities and towns across America. But Florida, I don't need to tell you that because you are the #1 in membership. You are the true champion of NLC. Give yourselves a hand. And we have the same priorities that you have. We know it's very important that we continue to support CDBG. Transportation is an important infrastructure need in our community, immigration reform, and as well as providing training for our elected officials so you can become better public officials. And it's tough during these tough times of economic downturn. But I want you to know that NLC, we continue to be your voice in Washington. I have the pleasure to meet with President Obama's administrator about once a month. And those conversations are very tough, but they're very candid. As I say to the president and his administration, we need help in the cities and towns. America cannot have a recovery if Main Street America is not part of that recovery. Don't you agree? So we understand, see, a pothole is not a Tea Party. A pothole is not Democrat or Republican. But a pothole needs to get fixed. And sometimes we need help from our federal legislator who forgets about us sometimes and don't realize that they're there to represent our best interests. I don't need to tell you that 2011 is going to be a very difficult year for us, and we should not expect any help for our federal government. But what I believe, Florida, that we're going to find a lot of help through the partnership and collaborations we can have with one another. We have great corporate partners in our community that will help us. We have the network and the best practice in the National League of Cities that will allow you to learn about CDBG and COPS program and how we can get our arms around preventing crime and programs that will help continue our youth to make them the future leaders of our cities and towns. And no, it will not be easy. But as leaders, you need to make the commitment to have a passion for the future and to give your citizens hope. Each and every day, even in Charlotte, North Carolina, they turn on the paper, they turn on the TV about unemployment is high and people are getting laid off. And we feel that pain. But as you, elected official, you must go out and recruit those companies that will relocate to your cities and towns. You need to make sure that your minority participation is very inclusive, that every small business owner has the opportunity to thrive and create jobs. That's what building mainstream America is all about, small jobs and economic prosperity. NLC, you should say, why should I join, James? Well, there are several reasons. One reason is the great network we have. You get to learn from other elected officials about best practices and what works for their cities and towns. You get to continue to network and understand more about immigration, CDBG, and Community Reinvestment Act. But more importantly, you get to understand that there's a group that will bring the elected officials together to make you stronger and put public service as the agenda. I don't like elected officials who just want to be seen on TV. I don't like elected officials who just want to read about their press clipping. I like an elected official who has a bigger vision than themselves, who really care about the citizen who they represent. So if you're an elected official, want to stand up for your city and stand up for your town, raise your right hand today and say, I want to represent. Then NLC is the organization for you. In the booth today, we have what we call the best program we can offer to all our citizens. It's called the NLC Prescription Drug Card. And it's a program, family, that we're trying to create about $10 million in savings for all our citizens across America. And to today, we have $6.4 million in savings. It is a prescription drug card program that allows your citizens to get prescription if they are not covered at a 20% discount. And guess what? Why this program is so successful. It's free for you as elected official, but more importantly, it's free to your citizen. Say, it's free. And so if your town is not participating, I will please encourage you to drop by the booth and sign up today. Is there any representative here from Bay Palm City, Florida here today? I wish they were, because they have generated $70,000 savings for their citizens, part of the NLC prescription drug card. Please, elected official, be a part of that program. Now, with 3 minutes left, because I want to come back, but I want to leave you with one challenge, and that challenge is Continue to have the passion in your belly to serve your citizens. Continue to make not the popular decision, but the tough decisions, because our citizens need us more now than ever. Continue to serve, though, with integrity and character, because we don't want to be like Congress and have to resign from our positions. We want to show Congress what really being elected officials about, being accountable, being successful, but accomplishing things for our cities and for our citizens. So when you leave here today, Florida, if you're not a member of NLC, I beg you to join. And if you are a member of NLC, continue to support our organization, because I think together we can really build America. Now, at this time, I need all you all to stand and take the NLC pledge. Please stand up. And I have the media here, so this is going to be on CNN and YouTube. Okay? And Fox. So please raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I state your name. Oh, no. Oh, no. Clarence, you told me this was a smart group now. I, and state your name, do by promise to continue to lead my city, my citizens, to the best of my ability. Thank you, Florida.
Thank you, President Mitchell. I told you he was the best. Now it is my pleasure to introduce today's keynote speaker. Naval Captain Mark Adamczyk is the class of 1969 chair for the study of officership at the Simon Center for the Professional Military Ethic at West Point. A graduate of the Naval Academy class of 1981, he retired from the U.S. Navy after more than 30 years. Captain Adamczyk, a naval flight officer and a graduate of the Naval Test Pilot School, class of 1993, has accumulated more than 3,000 flight hours in more than 25 different aircraft. Captain Adamczyk has served in a variety of high-level staff positions, including the Deputy Flag Assignment Officer to the Chief of Naval Personnel and the Head Aviation Warfare Policy Officer to the Chief of Naval Operations in the Pentagon. Let's welcome Captain Mark Adamczyk to the Sunshine State.
Thank you all very much. Is Lavelle working? Okay, there we go. President Mitchell, that's a tough act to follow. I got to tell you, you were using all my shtick, so I'm going to have to change it up. First of all, let me say it's truly an honor to be here. I had the great privilege of conducting a one-day seminar at the annual National League of Cities retreat in Annapolis, Maryland last year, so I do have some friends in the audience. It's really quite a remarkable honor, and I've also gotten some positive feedback that a lot of the things we talk about are germinating and manifesting in local and state government here in the state of Florida. Madam President, thank you, and I have truly been received with so much Florida hospitality. I love it. I have a great affiliation with the state of Florida. My older brother, who is a Naval Academy graduate, conducted his initial nuclear power training in the city of Orlando. In 1981, when I graduated from the Naval Academy, I got in my 1976 Buick Century without air conditioning and drove down I-95. Of course, I stopped at south of the border, like everybody has to, and drove to the beautiful white sandy beaches of Pensacola, Florida, where I started this wonderful journey this wonderful journey of service to my country as a naval aviator. Flying around Pensacola, learning to fly, seeing the Blue Angels certainly was a highlight of my experience. But I remember one Florida story that I have to share with you before I actually get into my remarks. As often is the case when you're a young flight officer in training, you have to get up really early in the morning to show up at the squadron for a flight. And I lived on Perdido Key, a beautiful place, Perdido Key, and I lived in a condominium with several of my friends. And it had been my habit, which is not a very good habit, after I brushed my teeth at night, I'd leave my toothbrush right on the sink. I wouldn't put it in a container or put it in one of those toothbrush holders. I had to get up at 4:30 for a flight, and when I walked into my bathroom and turned on the light, it appeared as if a palmetto bug, you all know about palmetto bugs, had decided that it would be a very comfortable place to sleep on the bristles of my toothbrush. Of course, I was mortified. I didn't brush my teeth that morning, in case you're wondering. But that's one of my fond memories of living in Pensacola. The palmetto bugs really, really scare me, as I know many of you, they do too. One other affiliation I have with Florida, I have the great privilege of having my brother-in-law, Mark Lee, here from Northport, and he is the director of the Denise Amber Lee Foundation, which advocates and lobbies industry and local and state governments around the country for 911 reform. So, Mark, it's really an honor that you drove over here to hear me talk. Thank you. As an ethics professor, and I've had the great privilege of teaching so many fine young men and women who have answered our nation's call to serve, as you all have, I start off my very first ethics lecture with a simple explanation of our lives. What I do is I bring in a large mayonnaise jar, empty, and I tell them that the mayonnaise jar sort of represents their life. And what I do is I take 3 or 4 large stones that fit all the way to the top of the mayonnaise jar, and I hold it up and I say, "Is the jar full?" And of course, the young undergraduates say, "Yeah, it's full." And then what I do is I reach under my desk and grab a handful of smaller pebbles. And I put them in the jar, and they sort of migrate around the larger stones. And then I hold the jar up and I say, "Is the jar full?" And they say, "Well, yeah, it's full now." And then I reach down and I grab a big handful of sand, and I pour that in the top. And of course, it then fills up the remainder of the jar. And I said, if you think of this as your life, and you put all the little things in your jar first, the sand, not going to be room for any pebbles or any rocks. And the reason I tell them that is they should consider life, their life, the important things in their life as the rocks. You want to put them in your life first. That's the metaphor. The rocks in your life represent the most important things. Your wife, your children, your faith, your family, your integrity, your character. The gravel represents perhaps some of those lesser important things, nonetheless important, like your automobile, like your education, like perhaps community service and other things. And the gravel, the sand, represents all the little things in life that we tend to put in the jar first. So that's how I start my lecture. What I want to really focus on this morning is to talk about service in a way that we rarely do. You see, how many of you got up this morning and exercised? You don't have to raise your hands if you're embarrassed, but this brave young lady was probably on the treadmill at 5 o'clock in the morning. Many of you exercise, many of you walk, many of you take your personal health and fitness as an important priority. You exercise. You eat right. I ate in the hotel last night, and I will tell you, this is a lecture about ethics, so I can't lie. I didn't get bacon or cheese on my hamburger last night in the restaurant because I'm concerned about my health, and I wanted to be able to fit in this suit today. When was the last time you exercised your integrity, your character, your moral worth, the essence of who you are as a person? See, it's a bit abstract, right? How do we do that? Well, I'm going to share with you some thoughts on how we can exercise our moral muscle so that we can gain strength morally and serve our constituents in a morally respectable and honorable way. So that's where we're going to go on our journey. Let me start out by telling you a quick story about an experience I had this past week. 30 years in the Navy, I applied for a position at West Point, and I was accepted to be their chair for the study of officership. The irony in all of that. As you can well imagine, I am truly humbled to be at such a wonderful institution of higher learning. West Point was ranked by Forbes as the number 3 college in America, only behind Williamson College and Princeton. So I'm honored to work there. Now, not knowing a whole lot about the Army culture, I'm observing the cadets, which is what the students are called. Their first summer when they arrive, they go through a very arduous summer training called Beast Barracks. How many of you would like to go through Beast Barracks? I think the name sort of underestimates the experience that they have. Now, at the end of the summer, when all the upper-class cadets come back, the plebes go on a 16-mile march in full gear from Camp Buckner, which is located just outside of West Point, and they march to join the rest of that long gray line. And I observed this. I didn't march. No way. Too old to march. And as the 1,200 young men and women who were plebes marched onto the campus of West Point, they had a banner that they were holding up. And the banner said, "For those we lead." For those we lead. Implies unconditionally selfless service. That it's absolutely not about them. It's about those who they will lead. It's a critical component of morality and character development is this notion of selfless. Mr. President, you mentioned this in your comments. It's all about the sound bites. It's all about me. We live in a culture where people are consumed with notions of entitlement, what I deserve, and it's all about me. So that banner that they were carrying influenced me in a way that I will never forget. The other banner that was hanging up in front of Washington Hall was hung by the senior class. And their banner said, "Them, not us." Them, not us. That's the essence of public service. And I'd like to investigate that just a little bit more. Confidence in government is at an all-time low. You also alluded to this, Mr. President. A recent Gallup poll, Congress came out based upon public opinion as only having an 11% confidence rating. Why is that? Conversely, the U.S. military has an 83% confidence rating by the public. Why is that? Why is that? Quite honestly, I'm proud to be a part of the 83% club. So I ask myself, and I ask you to ponder just for a moment, what is at the core? Is it the policies? Is it how we govern? Or is it really truly come down to a lack of trust? And in my view, it reflects, unfortunately, on many of us that serve the public, that we're not trusted. That we're not trusted. That somehow we lack a modicum of integrity that the general public can respect. And I'm saddened by that. And I'm upset by that. And a big part of my mission over the last few years has been to lecture and to try to promote a notion of moral leadership as being an integral function of service and the service you all do. So we'll explore what moral leadership means in just a moment. Moral values. Gallup poll conducted on moral values. The current condition of moral values in the United States. The poll, 76% said the moral values in our country are either fair or poor. 23% said excellent or good. I think it should be just the opposite. Now, the question would be, where's the trajectory heading? It's also not very good news. The outlook for the improvement of moral values in our country, 69%. 7 out of 10 people say it's getting worse. Quite honestly, I think it's shameful, and I think we should all get angry and make it a personal mission that starts with ourselves of trying to reverse that trend. So let me ask you an important philosophical question. Why do good people sometimes do bad things? Why do good people sometimes do bad things? Most people know the difference between right and wrong. I know all these young men and women over here know the difference between right or wrong. They know they shouldn't plagiarize in school, although ubiquitous cheating exists both at secondary education and in college. People know the difference between right and wrong, I would argue. Now, I ask the question, what ought I to do? And I choose the word ought for a very specific reason. What should I do oftentimes implies, well, what do the rules and regulations say? Right? And most of the time we focus on that. What should I do? Well, I don't know what I should do. Maybe I'll look at a regulation. Maybe I'll ask an attorney. Maybe I'll ask my supervisor. That's the what should I do part. What can I do is a completely different question. What can I do? There's a lot of things you can do, but ought you to do them? Ought implies a normative dimension to decision making. What ought I to do? Now, we oftentimes lean on a variety of ways of making those decisions. Some people look to faith-based writings, the Bible, the Quran, the Torah. That's how many of us make those what ought I to do decisions. I'll give you an example of a what ought I to do decision I made personally. During the first Gulf War, after the 44-day air campaign, all of the Republican Guard were leaving Kuwait and Kuwait City. The United States military set up a series of kill boxes in the southern part of Iraq and in the northern part of Kuwait. These kill boxes were designed to take out all the retreating Iraqi forces. Now, what a kill box implies is that if there's anything moving north in that kill box, you were cleared by rules of engagement to engage it, to attack it. Now, I was on one of those missions, and as you can well imagine, this is almost like shooting fish in a barrel. It's really what it is. But we were trying to degrade their ability to reconstitute when they got back to Iraq. Now, I was flying on a mission, and we detected on the sensors in the aircraft a large population of humans, people, moving in the field. Now, what could I do? I could have bombed them. What should I do? Well, the rules of engagement directed me to do that. But the more difficult question is, what ought I to do? And there was something that I felt in my heart as we were starting our attack run that didn't seem right. There was something about it. I couldn't see in my sensors large armored vehicles, things that would imply that these were actually, or was actually, a military target. And right before weapons release, I chose to abort the run. And as I left the target area, we were low enough, and as I rolled the airplane up, I looked down, and it was a Bedouin tribe. Nomads that live in the desert. Men, women, children, families, just out in the desert. So what I could do, what I should do, was completely different than what ought I to do. It was a moral decision because of the uncertainty. So the what ought I to do is something that you need to deeply reflect upon, not just over the next 30 minutes, but daily as a part of your physical regimen. There's a couple different ways of answering the what ought I to do question. And there's really two schools of thought. Two main philosophers that talk about what ought I to do. Now, John Stuart Mill is a very famous author, scholar, said, you know what you ought to do is you should do, or you ought to do, that which brings about the greatest happiness. It's a very simple idea. A very simple idea. Has nothing to do with outcomes, because we can't predict outcomes, can we? But what you do is, as thoughtfully and empirically, you determine what will bring about the greatest happiness. An example would be if I had $50 in my wallet, and after the break, one of these young men or women came up and said they wanted to buy a Walt Disney t-shirt, I could give $50 to one of them. Or I could give $50 to one and say share it with everybody else. Or I could give $1 to all 50 of them. Right? This is a calculation that we make in a lot of things, don't we? When we go buy things, we say, what will bring about the greatest return on my investment? So as you think about what you ought to do, one way to do it is to consider the greatest happiness principle. What will bring about the greatest good for the greatest number of people? And conversely, what will minimize harm to the greatest number of people? That's one way to think about it. That may be your way, I don't know. But it's certainly important to think about how you choose what you ought to do. You need to know this. And if you haven't at all reflected on how you make difficult choices, well, then I don't think you are as morally mature as you need to be in public service. Now, the other way you can do it, and this tends to be much more of the military model, and in my view, a lot of the reason why the military gets these high confidence grades, is you do that which comes from a self-imposed sense of duty. A self-imposed sense of duty. It's easy in the military. We swear allegiance to the Constitution of the United States, to defend it from all enemies, public and domestic. I know what my duty is as a military officer. How well codified is duty in local government? Do you know what your duty is? It may be explicit, but is it enough? Is it comprehensive to cover all important areas of service? What duties have you imposed upon yourself? If you act out of a sense of duty, you know what it really does is it liberates you from all of the angst and anxiety of having to make tough choices. Now, if I committed myself to the duty of never lying, which I have tried to do, not always successfully. I recently went to a beautiful formal gala with my wife. I'm proud to say of 25 years. And she went out and spent a lot of money on a gown, and she took forever getting ready. She came downstairs, you know, like you do at the senior prom. And she came downstairs, my kids were waiting to see her, and she looked at me and she said, "Mark, how do I look?" Now, I have committed myself to a sense of duty. But I also like to live, and I also like, I love my wife. So I may have fibbed. So every now and then, the duty ethic can be adjusted slightly. Think about those who were harboring Jews in their basements during the Holocaust. and the Nazi soldiers came in and said, "Are you hiding anybody in the basement?" Certainly, in a condition like that, I would say that the morally correct choice is to lie, But it's in rare, rare circumstances. If we start chipping away, if we start adding conditions to duty, then guess what? It's a slippery slope. And we get right back to where we were before we truly embrace the sense of duty. Okay. The second important ethical question, in my view, is what type of person do you want to be? What type of person do you want to be? Now, Aristotle wrote in great length about this very topic. Aristotle actually constructed virtue ethics. We call this virtue ethics. What type of person do you want to be? You know, if you get the what ought I to do part right, there's still another component to actually doing the right thing. Many of us all the time talk about what we should do, what we ought to do, but we don't do it. Many, many cases where women are sexually harassed in the workplace. They know what the right thing to do. You know, they know what they ought to do. But often for a lot of reasons, none of which, to me, really solve the problem, is they fail to act. Why? Reciprocation, they may be excommunicated, right? They may get fired. Their friends may think of them differently, right? They're the victims, but yet, in many cases, are unable to act. Aristotle talks about this. Aristotle says, what gives you the courage to make morally correct choices is character. It's character. And I'm going to explain to you what character means in the Aristotelian sense. You know, if I, at my retirement speech, this wasn't said, but if it was, if someone stood up and said, you know, Mark, at least throughout your whole career, the ups and downs, the goods, the bads, you're a person of great character, I'd have been pretty happy about that. Right? Wouldn't you just beam with pride if someone said you were a person of great character? So what does character mean? It's kind of this abstract concept. We all have a different notion of character. Well, Aristotle says that character is the summation of all your virtues. All your virtues. And he lists them all. We know what virtues are, aren't they? They're courage, compassion, humor. No, the president's got the virtue of humor. Right? And it's a great virtue. Generosity, altruism. These are all the virtues that you add up and they make up your character. Now, the only problem with virtues is if you don't have the right amount of the virtue, it's considered a vice. Humility, perfect example, particularly in public service. You know, the right amount of humility is a virtue. But can you have an excess of humility? Can you be overly humble? Yes. Some people would say that's being self-deprecating, perhaps. Can you have a shortage of humility? Absolutely. And many of us in this room do. It's a vice. What Aristotle says is, you got to fix that. But one of the things we don't do is we don't spend a whole lot of time focusing on those virtues that we either have a deficit or an excess of in our life. Why? Because most of us have a deficit of humility and we're unwilling to admit that we're underly humble or underly courageous or underly compassionate. So that's what character is. The question is, can you build character? Absolutely. It goes back to my first comment, which is you have to exercise. A perfect thought experiment for all of you right now would be to think of a virtue that you either have a deficit or an excess of. I'll tell you what mine is. I'm not bashful to admit it. I'm impatient. Patience is a virtue. I'm impatient. All the time I'm trying to correct it. We go to church Sunday morning, I'm focusing on being patient. Get out of church, and the very first thing I do is tell my kids, we got to run to the car because I want to get out of this parking lot before it chokes for 30 minutes. My kids will be screaming because I'll be like running old ladies over. People in wheelchairs and walkers, I'm like, you get out of my way. I'm getting to the exit first. I can't help myself. But I know that I have the vice of impatience, and I'm trying to fix it. I'm working on it. Maybe not so successfully, but at least I've identified it as the vice in my life. You see, Aristotle says if you get all of your virtues just right, it's called the golden mean. It'd be like hitting a ball down the middle of the fairway every time you play golf. Is that possible? Is it unrealistic to believe we can get all of our virtues perfect? It's unrealistic. It's unrealistic. Should we spend our lifetime trying to get our virtues in the middle, in the mean? Yes. Character is what allows you to do the right thing. Understanding morality, understanding what you ought to do is only part of the game. Because I would argue most of you know the difference between right or wrong. But when good people do bad things, it's because of a lack of character. You look at all of the newspapers, all of the perp walks, both in public and private, every single one of those, certainly all of you could too, identify the vice in the person's life that prevented them from doing the right thing. When I have students who do the wrong thing, drink and drive, cheated on an exam, the very first question I ask them is, did you know that was wrong? Yes, sir. I knew it was wrong. You all know what's wrong. You all know what's right. It's a lack of character that prevents us from doing the right thing. Now, here's another question. I've told you now how you can build your character. What is your responsibility as a public servant in building the characters of those who work for you and with you? Do you believe you have a responsibility to do that? I'm not going to ask for people to raise their hands because I feel strongly that the answer is yes. I have spent my career trying to develop the character of the young men and women who have served so honorably for me. When they do the wrong thing, it's imperative that you as legislators, elected officials, superiors, mentors, I'm sure your mentor spent a lot of time with you working on virtue. There is no doubt. How do we do that? How do we do that? Send them an email? Text them? No. The first thing you do is you become the embodiment of character. I believe character rubs off. I believe character rubs off. So if you have the virtue of compassion, you make compassion ooze out of your body so that those who have a vice in compassion will find it highly intoxicating. What you want to do is make character intoxicating with those you work with, and your families, and your friends, and your superiors. You can work on it. The other thing you do is do it very directly. Is when you see people showing a vice in their character, I think you have a responsibility to say something. We focus 99% of our day on correcting deficiencies in productivity, administration, and performance. It's not good enough. It's not nearly good enough. Because the good people will continue to do bad things. You've got to shift that focus and commit a little bit more of your time as leaders engaging people on matters of character. I truly believe it's your responsibility, and if you shirk that responsibility, then you will be the one picking up the pieces. You will be the ones who will be viewed by the public as having a less than meritorious level of confidence. I truly believe that's your responsibility. All right, so let me tell you a quick story that I heard this week. It deals directly with character. The cadet character staff at West Point was holding a symposium preparing the cadets for the character lessons that they will teach. this coming semester. And I sat in on it because I was really interested to hear how they were going to approach it. And they were contextualizing examples, albeit Army examples, military examples, about character. This one young man told a story, and I want to share it with you. He has an older brother who's a U.S. Marine, had one of his fellow Marines injured in Afghanistan. The young man got flown back to Walter Reed. And this Marine who was on leave went to Walter Reed to visit his friend. And he got lost in Walter Reed. If anybody's ever been there, once you're in it, it's impossible to get out. I mean, it is just huge, huge building. He wound up in a different ward. He was in his full Marine dress uniform. He wound up in a different ward, and this nurse very frantically saw him in his Marine uniform and said, hurry up, you got to get in. And he really wasn't sure what was going on, but she led him into a room where there was this very, very old veteran, elderly gentleman, was in an oxygen tent, clearly on the last legs of his journey. So the Marine, without thinking, sat down next to the man and held his hand. And he held his hand all afternoon, all night, and in the morning the man passed. The Marine then let go of his hand and went out and talked to the nurse. And his first question was, who was that? And she said, it was your father. And he said, no, it wasn't my father. She said that they had been begging the son to get there, who was a Marine, and for one reason or another could not make it there. And they just mistook this Marine to be his son. And he sat there all night with a person he did not know, holding his hand. Now that's character. How many of you would have done that? And as this young cadet told the story, I couldn't wait to come down here and share it with you, because that's everything that service represents. It's not about you. It's about them. It's just like their banner said, them, not us, for those we lead. Let me finish with two final thoughts. Moral leadership. The term moral leadership. For many of you, it just sounds like another fancy title to another fancy book that you may buy at the airport while you're waiting to get on a flight. Moral leadership to me is your most important responsibility as public servants. I have heard the word service at least 20 times this morning, and then I stopped counting. That's what we're all about. Moral leadership is about service. Let me tell you what I think moral leadership is, and I'll probably say it more than once. Moral leadership is calling others to critical ethical values and the behaviors that emanate from them. Let me say that again. Moral leadership is about calling others to critical ethical values and the behaviors that emanate from them. So how do we call people to critical ethical values? I'll tell you one way we do it is we put up a values list, right? Our organization, these are our enduring values. Post it up on a billboard. Any large industry organization you go to, right? Don't they have a code of ethical standards? Is that how we call people to critical ethical values? Maybe one way. It may be one way to sort of frame the conversation. But how do we call people to critical ethical values? How do we do that? We just shout it out? No. Is it walking the walk and talking the talk? Yes. Is it having conversations about what the critical ethical values of your organizations are? With people, with human beings? When was the last time you just got out from behind your desk and sat down with somebody you hadn't met or hadn't talked to before and have a conversation about values, about what you value, what the organization values, sharing ideas about values, having work centers discuss values, coming to Annapolis and spending a whole day talking about ethical values, becoming the embodiment of that which you believe the organization should represent. See, if you call others to critical ethical values, then what happens? They start behaving in ways consistent with those values. That's the beauty of it. I charge all of you, I encourage you, I implore you to consider moral leadership as a principal responsibility of you as elected, appointed leaders of your communities. All of your organizations represent all that is good about service. But we must make critical ethical values explicit, like the nose on your face. Does it take time? Yes. Do you have time? No. Should you make time? Yes. When was the last time you woke up in the morning, albeit without a palmetto bug on your toothbrush, said, you know what, I'm going to commit a part of my day calling others to the critical ethical values of our organization? I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand because I would imagine very few hands would go up. Now, maybe I'm passionate about this because this is what I do, but I have got to tell you, I have been part of organizations that just ooze integrity, ooze values, and it's just not because we're lucky. And if you think that people are going to behave ethically due to luck, well, that's considering hope a strategy. And in my view, hope is not a strategy. You have to create, as leaders, strategies to get your people to not only buy in, but also populate amongst themselves and act in ways that are consistent with moral leadership. Now let me finish, because I just have a few moments left, with this quote. I think it's a great way to sort of finish the talk up. Because what we've talked about is confidence, we talked about matters of integrity and character. We talked about how do we make moral choices and what fuels the engine of moral action. It's character, it's virtues, and it's being smart enough, wise enough, and brave enough to take a look in the mirror and say, you know what? Got some work to do. Because all of you got some work to do, as I do. And I promise you tomorrow, I'm going to take my time getting out of that church parking lot. I'm going to take my time getting out of that church parking lot. Yeah. And then the last thing we did is we talked about moral leadership and your responsibility as being moral leaders. So here's a quote on how I believe you should live. You should live so that when your children think about fairness and integrity, they think of you. Live so that when your children think about fairness and integrity, they think about you. For these young men and women over here, for at least for a moment, are thinking about fairness and integrity. I hope they're thinking about their parents. And I hope all of your children think about you the same way. It has been an absolute honor for me to be here with all of you. I will stick around afterwards if anybody has any questions. I wish you all the very best of luck. I admire your willingness to serve, and I salute each and every one of you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Oh, thank you.
Wow. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Colleagues, I want to thank you for joining us. What profound, moving stories, compelling arguments in these troubling times, and I hope they all gave us today. Pardon me. Thank you again so much for joining us during this general session. I do hope to see you in our past president's luncheon. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.